For more on the recent developments in the Trump administration, we're joined by Michael Barbaro, managing editor and host of The Daily, a new podcast of the New York Times. Michael, welcome.
Good morning.
First, let's talk about the travel ban here, because
Sure.
you heard President Trump say that he might issue a new order this week. He's going to surprise us. What do you think the best course of action for the administration at this point is? To take this through the courts or to issue a new order?
It certainly looks like the legal path is treacherous for the president, and that he knows that if this goes to the Supreme Court, the math right now is really difficult for him, and it might not ever happen. So it sounds like he's talking about a do-over, a new executive order that would replace the current one that the United States Court of Appeals has basically told him is legally flawed. That would be a real setback for him, and it doesn't look like he wants to admit that it's a do-over, but that may be, in fact, what it is if he issues a new executive order on Monday.
The White House has seen its fair share of turmoil this week, Michael. Let's talk about National Security Advisor Michael Flynn. In terms of the gravity of this situation, the fact that he may have communicated with the Russian ambassador as Mr. Trump was still a private citizen and may have discussed sanctions, what's your assessment of that situation and Flynn's future? You
know what's so fascinating about that case? It's us now knowing that when you're doing these kinds of phone calls and you're about to go into the administration, you're being eavesdropped on by the United States government. I don't think he knew that. And so the situation now is that he may have violated a very particular, obscure-sounding law that says private citizens are not allowed to negotiate with foreign governments until they're in the government. And that's what Michael Flynn is now accused of doing. What matters most is whether Donald Trump has confidence in Michael Flynn. And Michael Flynn showed him extraordinary loyalty by being one of the first generals to endorse him as a candidate. That was a rare thing. The military was quite anxious of Donald Trump as a candidate. Donald Trump really values that kind of a loyalty. But he also knows that the National Security Council is not a place for a controversy. You want that place to be kind of a pure zone where things are getting done and there's not the distraction of anything resembling a scandal. So there are growing signs that the White House may be losing some confidence in Michael Flynn, but again, it's just up to whether the president has lost any confidence in Michael Flynn.
Meanwhile, some congressmen are coming home to some pretty boisterous town halls, as we heard, and some people are comparing some of the protests to Tea Party tactics, in effect. How do you think the GOP is going to react to this?
You know why they're so much like the Tea Party? Because in 2010, the Tea Party became highly skilled at making lawmakers uncomfortable by getting into their faces, going to their houses, showing up on their porches and saying, "We demand to be heard." And I've compared notes with my colleagues who have written about the Tea Party in 2010, and they see the Democratic Progressive Coalition that's now calling itself the Resistance as a better organized version of that now than even 2010. So the Republican Party has to be taking notice of this. But there's an important caveat, which is what the Tea Party was really good at was challenging Republicans in the primary process. We're now talking about largely progressive Democratic crowds showing up at Republican town halls. And those Republican lawmakers, if they're being honest, are going to look at that crowd and say, "You're not going to probably take me out." It's when my Republican constituents are showing up and screaming at me that I'm probably going to be my most worried. But they know there's a presidential election just 4 years away.
Well, we're already on that timeline.
And they see a national movement that's starting to take form. And of course, they're going to be paying attention.
When we talk about what's happening in the country, you just started the Daily podcast for the New York Times, Michael. What are you hearing from people around the country? You're talking to parts of the country that we haven't heard from as much, perhaps.
Yeah, I mean, we're doing this show because we think this is an extraordinary moment. I think we're all aware of that, and it demands to be explained. And I think the way we explain it is by talking to people all over the country, hearing them out, making no assumptions. And that's what this show, The Daily, is about. And it's blessedly short. It's 15 to 20 minutes. And much like what you guys do here, you know, we want to inhabit like the world of nuance and gray zones that are kind of being lost in our national conversation.
Well, it is an interesting time to be in the media.
Isn't it?
And an exciting time as well to be at the New York Times in particular. Michael Barbaro, thanks for your time. Congrats on the new project.
Thank you.